All right. Can my panelists hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So we will let people keep rolling in, but in an effort to be conscious of everyone's time, I'm just going to get started today. So thank you all for joining us for our second virtual Uptown Business Support Panel. The Uptown Consortium is really excited to offer these to our Uptown businesses and organizations. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Brooke Duncan, and I serve as the Director of Community Development for Uptown Consortium, working with our Uptown institutions and our neighborhoods. Today, we're here to share guidance around Uptown businesses amidst the coronavirus pandemic and statewide reopening regulations. The discussion will be centered on how businesses can effectively communicate with customers and partners as they reopen. Our panelists include Bridget Castellini and Tory Kennedy from Wordsworth Communications. If you guys want to wave. Awesome. And Deidre Hazelbaker from Brn Digital. For a little background on our panelists, Bridget is the managing partner of Wordsworth Communications, an award-winning PR agency, and has over 2 decades of strategic communications experience. Wordsworth supports brands and organizations of all sizes, including their favorite client, or one of their favorite clients, Uptown Consortium. Tory is a senior accountant executive at Wordsworth Communications, and she works with several agency clients, including Uptown, to develop and execute strategic communication plans. Deidre is a social media manager, strategist, analyst, content creator, community manager, and media buyer. She is the owner of Brn Digital, and her clients include multi-location businesses like Gold Star Chili, Frisch's Big Boy, and Tire Discounters, and brands like Kroger's Simple Truth, Private Selection, and Comforts. Many of you submitted questions before our panel today. We'll plan to go through those questions first with our 3 guests, and then we'll jump into any questions that you may have throughout the panel at the end. So feel free to use the Q&A webinar feature. For my screen, it's at the bottom. It's also probably at the bottom for your iPhone or computer screen as well. So when you ask a question, make sure to include your name and your organization or business so that we can know who we're hearing from and who we are speaking to within our audience. I know we have a variety of businesses and organizations that signed up for today's call. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. Deidre, what is the definition of digital media and what is a social media strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. First, thanks so much for inviting me here. It's a pleasure. And to get right in, basically digital media is simply put anything that's not traditional or print. So your website, display, search, PPC, email, SMS, digital influencers, I mean, the list goes on. And social media really falls under that umbrella. And so social media, and this is something I harp on like no other, social media is a tool, not a strategy. And it's really important to remember that it is a tool, not a strategy. Instead of a tool, you could think of it like, or as a tactic or channel or network. But before you say things like, you know, I want to be on Instagram or what's a TikTok about and all these different things, you know, you really have to step back. So Instagram has like the cart before the horse. It's really just jumping the gun into getting into social media. When you're defining your strategy, you really have to think about your objectives, your goals, really map out the challenges that you face as a business. And then you have to make sure your entire team is aligned and crystal clear, because it really starts to develop the why in your approach to your business and why you're even on social media in the first place. So as you kind of really start to dig into that, like the benefits of what you offer, the reasons to believe are just so crucial before you even start to think about the tactic of Instagram, TikTok, all of these different things. So as you kind of start to define those, you really start to find your voice and what you could really have a right to talk about. Cats are super popular on the internet. I get it, but not every brand should put cats in their social media efforts because it doesn't make sense. So as soon as you find your voice and you really start to define what tactics you want to go after to support that voice, then you can really start to have a great strategy and define things like what channels, target audience, what type of content that you want out there, and what you could curate versus produce. And then you really start to get into responding and engaging, because I mean, it's called social media for a reason. And if you're not going to join that conversation and respond and put effort into listening and reacting to what your customers are saying, then it really just makes no sense to kind of play there. And then just really you kind of jump into how to measure success after you kind of get into all of those different options across the board. So build your strategy, really dive into why it makes sense for your business, and then you'll have very clear tactics that come out of it.
Great, thank you. And Bridget, kind of playing off of that, how do you stay connected and relevant in the changing virtual world, especially with what we're experiencing right now?
You know, first of all, we have to acknowledge that this is hard. Everyone is struggling. We all shifted virtually overnight to a virtual workplace. And for many of us, there's not a confirmed end in sight. So everybody is really figuring out and continuing to figure out how they can do this, and how they move forward. Staying connected is something that we've heard a lot of people say they're struggling with. Our team has struggled with it. We've heard from clients that they're struggling with it. So we wanted to offer, and I was really pleased to see this question, wanted to offer a few suggested ways to stay connected virtually that have worked for us. So here are 4 ideas. First is to use social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram to really personally catch up with someone on what's going on with them in their life. LinkedIn on the professional side is a great place to see milestones and achievements. And I know Deidre would agree that social media shouldn't and doesn't replace human interaction, but it gives you information that allows for a personal connection. So for example, on LinkedIn, you could learn about someone's promotion or perhaps see that they just published a paper. And then that becomes a really good nugget that you can follow up on with a personal note or a phone call. Our second tip is to don't be afraid to make a phone call. With a phone call, you can get your point across. You can make sure your tone isn't misunderstood, as it often can be over email. And you think about the number of emails that we're sending now, as we are communicating virtually. If you pick up the phone, especially important with someone that maybe you haven't met before and you were introduced to over email, you could certainly make sure that you're putting a voice to the name. A phone call really helps to build that personal connection, and for people that you know well personally and that you're doing business with, consider proactively scheduling check-ins with your work colleagues and family and friends, and that's just going to help continue to support and build those strong relationships. A third tip is to use technology wisely and prioritize how you use it. I don't know about everyone else, but when we initially flipped to this virtual workplace, it's like suddenly everyone wanted to schedule Zoom calls and everybody was getting used to the technology. So I encourage you to take a step back now that we're well into this new normal of a virtual workplace, and think about, okay, I need to communicate. What is the best place and vehicle to do that? So if you're having a quick conversation with someone or you're following an agenda, perhaps a video conference is the way to go. If you need to share information widely, then maybe an email blast. If you need a quick response, consider instant messaging or texting. And we have found that it's helpful to align on preferred ways of communication up front, and make sure by asking people, like, how do you like to communicate? And if I need something from you quickly, can we jump on IM or can I text you? And then asking their preferences and aligning on those up front and varying the mode of communication that you use with them will just help, streamline that communication. And then a final tip that we'd love to offer is collaboration in real time. So at our agency, we have a shared drive that allows us to make changes to a document simultaneously. Instead of emailing something back and forth, which can be super irritating, and then you suddenly lose version control. Having that collaboration in real time and actually going through a document just helps kind of build that connection and understand changes that people are making to a document. You can also do this in Google Docs. And again, it's just a great way to foster collaboration and teamwork.
Awesome. Those are some great tips. And I would add that, I think we're still getting used to the Zoom products and all of the virtual world out there. So
Sure.
Still getting used to all the features. And speaking of features, I know I saw someone raise their hand. So be sure to use the Q&A below if you have any questions, or put any questions in the chat and we'll be sure to cover that at the end. So Tory, I don't know if you want to add upon that and talk a little bit about the do's and don'ts on virtual media with others. Hey, Tory.
Oops, muted myself. See, here we go. Pay attention to when you're muted and when you're not. Lesson number one. But just to clarify, double check, when we talk about virtual media, are we really thinking specifically like these types of virtual meetings? Brooke, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to double check, to make sure that we're answering the right question. So like I said, first and foremost, make sure that you're unmuted when you are talking, but also it's good to mute yourself when you're not talking. That way, no one accidentally hears your dog barking at the mailman in the background. And we've kind of mentioned some of the technological difficulties of transitioning to this totally virtual workplace and this very virtual world. So if that technology is something that like you're not very comfortable with or not as familiar with, making sure that you download things in advance, making sure that you do test runs and really familiarize yourself with the different ways that these things work. There's nothing more anxiety inducing than getting caught up in the moment when you're supposed to be already doing something and realizing that you're kind of a little bit in and over your head. But I think most people have found these platforms to be pretty friendly once you get the hang of it, but giving yourself that time and that grace to learn how these things work. And then, once you are on, like we said, making sure that you mute yourself when you're not talking. And then just the way that you would have a meeting agenda in an in-person meeting, making sure that you still have that for different types of virtual meetings as well, because people are already, in a very different environment, I think, that has many more distractions than people are used to for different types of meetings. So having something that can keep you on track, I think, is really helpful. Then when we look at don'ts, one of the things I think about is be really careful about where you position yourself. Don't position yourself, right in front of a window where you're completely washed out and no one can really see you, or in a opposite, like in a dark place where no one can see anything that's happening at all. So just paying attention when you're in your own environment to what people can see behind you. Don't wait until the last minute to sign in. Kind of going back to that idea that like there's nothing worse than trying to get in somewhere and then running into a problem and kind of being stuck in that panicky mode. And then kind of the last one would be not to multitask, which is really challenging when someone can only see like this much of you, not to like swipe like a look at your cell phone or like respond to emails so it still looks like you're looking at the computer. It just makes it a lot more difficult to engage in meaningful conversations, which is hopefully the reason that you're having a meeting in the first place.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tory. This one is a two-part question for Bridget. What advice would you offer to brands and businesses who seem inclined to eliminate all communications during the COVID circumstances, whether due to budget cuts or a concern that messaging is not important or relevant in these challenging times, or they simply fear putting out messaging might just not resonate? And on the other hand, what about brands who feel compelled to charge forward with messaging?
So to answer the first part of the question, our counsel is to absolutely not turn it off. Your customers, those who follow your business or your organization, they want to hear from you. They need to hear from you. If you provide a service, your customers need to know when and how they can get it from you. It's important to be authentic, to show empathy, to be transparent. We don't have all the answers, and saying that you don't have the answers is absolutely fine. You can say, here's what I know now, and then as things change, you can update. If you want to do something as simple as just putting a quick update on all of your communication channels, on your website, perhaps a Facebook page, wherever your customers or those who communicate with you get information about your business. Put a quick update up about what they need to know, and most importantly, how they can get a hold of you. So the other side of the question, those who do want to move forward with messaging, kind of building off what Deidre said at the beginning of the conversation, you need a strategy. You need to make sure that you know what you're going to say and that everyone is in alignment with that. So our counsel would be to establish that strategy and appoint a communications response team. And depending on the size of your company, could be 1 to 2 to, if you have a larger company, many more people within the organization who touch different parts of the business. And you can start with a message platform and make sure that everyone's comfortable with the messaging. And one thing that we did early on with clients was proactively walk through questions and answers. And that helped us align on and help them align on, what they were comfortable saying. It's interesting to go back and look, okay, here's the beginning of the pandemic. There were some of the issues that we faced. And now that we're at the middle, and then some of the businesses that we work with as they've reopened, what are they comfortable saying? So gaining alignment and making sure that everyone's comfortable with answers to those questions, especially about how your business is affected by the coronavirus. What are your policies for employees? How are you going to keep your employees safe as they return back to work? How are you going to keep customers safe as they come back into your business? And what are your plans and how are you meeting customer needs? So gaining alignment on that messaging and then being consistent across all of your channels is extremely important. And then we have also found that it's helpful, if possible, to have a spokesperson or several people within the organization who are appointed as those spokespeople, especially if they're media facing. Again, for the importance of consistency of messaging, you want to make sure that you're saying the same things. And then when people are going to your communication channels, they're reading the same things. That's extremely important. And then finally, this is going to become a theme throughout this conversation today. You want to be sure that you're authentic, you're showing empathy, and you're being transparent, and you're updating as things change.
I think that helps with relevancy as people are updating their social media pages as well, to really think about not just updating, on a weekly basis, but making sure your hours are aligned on Facebook and are aligned on your website. I just went somewhere recently where I looked it up on their website and those were their hours, but they had a paper on their door with different hours. So I think as consumers are starting to go back into businesses, really trying to align just hours of operation is just one critical piece that can help drive business.
Really good point.
Small businesses in Uptown. Deidre, what shifts are you seeing in the way brands and businesses reach their customers and consumers during challenging circumstances like these? For example, shifting messaging from TV to digital, or increases in podcasts and webinars?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically everything that was in an innovation pipeline for our clients really just got moved up and fast forwarded. So things that we've been like, pie in the sky, like maybe we could do this, different things like that, really just started launching during as a reaction to COVID because it was such a convenience for customers. And so convenience versus content really became king, which I think is just fascinating of the innovations that are actually going to come out of this pandemic. For one example, we work with Frisch's Big Boy and we launched Big Boy's Market. Who would have ever thought you could buy toilet paper in a drive-through at a fast food restaurant, right? But it's something that we had actually talked about months prior of like, hey, what if we had like milk and eggs? Granted, we didn't know the currency of toilet paper was going to be the big one, but it was one of those where we kind of had it in our toolbox, and then we were able to launch it really quickly. We had it up within weeks. The following week after the stay-at-home order, was announced. Tire discounters, again, something that we've been testing, and like Blue Ash with Service Valet. It was basically fast forwarded that we have to be able to go to the customer, safely pick up their vehicle and get it back, right? And we just launched it. And it was like, people that were in different roles moved into other roles to help execute and launch all of these different tools and convenience items for customers. And then I still remember, and it was the Friday the 13th of COVID when the wine with wine, we didn't know it was a thing yet, was announced, and the stay-at-home order was issued. And my team, my clients, we all just rallied. We just kind of looked at it as like, okay, well, what do we got to do? We have to serve people. I have a lot of clients in restaurant, service, across the board. Tire Discounters was deemed essential early on to help with, EMS, nurses, people still had to get to work across the board. So it was just so exciting. And the good part was just to see everybody rally together and take on different roles, across the board to make sure that we could really be there for the customers. From a media standpoint, we've seen like all-time lows on media, right? Like cost per impressions, cost per clicks are just like dramatically low because a lot of customers or businesses did have to pull out their media, right? Because they were closed. But a lot of them, even if closed, if you were to stay on and offer virtual content or be able to pivot to stay top of mind and really give the gift of anything that your business can strategically provide information on, that's what was really powerful, was to stay in contact and to stay top of mind with customers. And you're right, like it's, a print billboard couldn't come down, right? So we had got rid of Frisch's Big Boy, the bar, early on because bars were the first thing to be affected, right? But even before restaurants were starting to close, but that we couldn't take down that billboard, but we could turn off instantaneously all of our media that was bar focused and shift it to drive-through, delivery, carry out, anything that was off premise. So really just the power of digital media is just that it's so nimble. Like we were able to like almost not waste a penny within the reaction of the pandemic.
Thank you. Tory, the Uptown neighborhood of Avondale is attempting to communicate in a neighborhood where there is a Wi-Fi void and lack of social distancing. So obviously this question came in and is specific to the Avondale neighborhood. Could you provide effective communication and recommendations for 35 and under residents?
Yeah, so it's a difficult challenge when you're looking at that kind of like digital divide. But I think in this situation, our recommendation would be to really try to have like a multi-pronged approach to meet as many different groups of people as you can. You're probably not going to find one tactic that's going to meet everyone across the spectrum, even if it is just like those under 35, and you want to try to impact as many people as possible. So one thing that we would probably still recommend is maintaining your messaging across your social and digital channels. So your social media, especially if you're looking at people under 35, like Twitter and Instagram, since Facebook tends to lean a little bit older, but still having all of those and making sure that the messaging is really consistent and clear and concise, and you're getting out the information that you want to, because even people who may not have access to Wi-Fi, if they have access to a smartphone, can access social media sites through different, through cellular data. So that's an option. It's certainly not an ideal fix for the situation, but it could be one step. And along with that, making sure that your website has that same information. Again, that doesn't really address the Wi-Fi issue, but it's making sure that you're covering all of your bases so that when you do have the opportunity to share your messaging with someone, that everything is there that they need. Another potential option that would be worth exploring would be a text message platform. If you have already access to like a database of phone numbers, maybe that you've collected through like different community events, or if it'd be possible to start gathering phone numbers, sending out text messages can be a really effective way of getting information to people who may not be regularly using Wi-Fi. Even if people don't have access to Wi-Fi, most people typically have access to a cell phone that can receive text messages. And there are a lot of different platforms out there for people to explore. As we're using that as like another communication channel, that could be a little bit of like a creative approach. Lastly, the other thing that we would think about is kind of just going back to basics and making sure that you have appropriate signage up as community spaces start to reopen, as businesses start to reopen, that there is really ample, really clear signage explaining the rules and explaining what's expected of people, so that people can see that up front and hopefully try to address some of those issues as people start to get out and about more. And if there are spaces where it's appropriate, potentially having like take home, like print flyers, where you can share all that information that you would be sharing on your social media or on your website or via text, but reach someone who maybe doesn't have access to those different like technological devices. And making sure that all that information is in one place. It's still not a guarantee that you'll hit everyone, and it becomes a little more challenging because so many different gathering places are closed. But as those opportunities start to arise, making sure that those resources are available to people in those places.
Great. I think I never thought about the text messaging platform. I've heard of like robocalling, and I think there are a few organizations that do that, but text messaging might be something to look into. So maybe we'll send some follow-up information on that. Following up kind of about connecting to young adults in this virtual and digital time, I know we had a specific question about TikTok, and I was hoping Deidre could share a little bit about if that is beneficial right now. I know it depends on what type of organization or business that you're working with, but if you could just share a little information about how to contact young adults and if TikTok is a good platform for that.
Oh, I get the great one. Yes. So again, when you go back and you're building your strategy and young demographic, and you have content that really makes sense for that channel, sure, do TikTok. But you're going to get called out really quickly if you don't do it authentically. If you just start putting your president on there dancing and he's just, you can tell that it's forcing into this environment that you're not authentic about it. It's not going to resonate with anybody. You're just going to be on there dancing to your mom and dad and all these different, people there. So I think there is an opportunity to reach young people on networks. Like the younger networks do tend to be Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram. And then usually Twitter falls somewhere in between, and Facebook does tend to skew a little bit older now. SMS is obviously a great platform for younger people as well. And then, but the thing to note is whichever channel, and again, it comes down to content works better in certain networks versus others. If you have paid media to support it, you can target based off of age. So you can really narrow it down pretty quickly on any of the networks out there. They all have an age breakdown across the board. But I think just the big takeaway that before you get into TikTok, before you get into Instagram, is just to make sure you're really clear of your objectives, your goals, and what you're going to talk about. Because again, if you throw dance videos out there and kitty cats, just to throw dance videos out there, kitty cats, and they don't matter to your business, it's not going to resonate and it's not going to drive business across the board.
Thank you. Bridget, we have a volunteer marketer with the Clifton Market on the call. How do you market when you have no budget? Should they let employees do it themselves?
It's a great question. Yes, but first and foremost, you need a plan and you need parameters or guidelines to follow. So we wouldn't suggest turning over marketing to employees without some sort of structure in place. So thinking about maybe the Facebook page for the Clifton Market, you could take a step back and make sure that you have a content calendar and a roadmap that plots out, what the monthly posts will look like, how frequently you're posting, what the content looks like. And then you could divide up the roles and responsibilities among employees, if they're interested and if they have time to do it. If possible, consider making it part of their job description. If not, it could be something that kind of goes by the wayside if they don't feel like they have ownership in it. But if you did break it up, one employee potentially could handle posts to Facebook, another could do Twitter, another could potentially do announcements or press releases. But it's important to have those guidelines and some sort of parameters in place. And then more importantly is having someone appointed and identified who can actually be the person who reviews the content and approves it, and make sure that everyone's comfortable with it before it's released. And then right now, you need to make sure that someone is answering and responding to questions and queries. So if you suddenly start posting frequently on Facebook and maybe that had been turned down before, you want to make sure, as things reopen, people have questions, that if they are asking you on Facebook because they're seeing a lot of posts and activity, that someone's actually responding to them. and it's not lingering. And then back to thinking about employees and making it part of their job description. Before you take that step, make sure you get buy-in from them and find out, what's reasonable for them as part of their job to actually do this. Make sure they understand the time that's involved, or again, it could get pushed to the back burner if they become busy. And if manpower truly is an issue here, then consider focusing on one communications channel and turning that up, and then turning everything else down until you get back to a place where you have a full team to support, what you're trying to do. And then a final suggestion would be to tap into local colleges, including one in Uptown, who have great internship programs, and see if you could get an intern, a college intern, or a postgraduate fellow who could help with the strategy, again, making sure that it is approved by someone, at the market. It would be great, though, in the current environment if you could offer that person a small stipend.
Absolutely. I think those are some great pointers. And then before we go into a few questions for each of you, Deidre, could you share top 3 tips pertaining to social media marketing? I know a lot of tips have been shared today, but what would be your top 3 for small businesses in Uptown?
Yeah, absolutely. My first one, and it's always strategy, I hope harp on it, but just starting with the why. There is a great book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I recommend everybody to read it because it really challenges you to focus in on why you even exist or what you're trying to offer to the world, as a business, and really digging in there and making sure that you know exactly what you want to talk about. The next one is always be optimizing. With social media, it's not even just maximizing down to the dollar, you can maximize down to the penny. And it's one of those where if we have any spend, I know every dollar counts, so every penny has to count. When we post anything that has media spend behind it, the day that it's going to go live, or if it's going over an amount of weeks or whatever it might be from a campaign standpoint, we are literally in there checking it right when it goes live every morning to make sure, is the sentiment correct? Like even just looking at data and whether you're getting a nice cost per click or leads across the board, are people really reacting the way that you expected them to? Making sure to respond to those questions across the board. And if they're not, optimize it, change that creative, change the targeting, make sure that, if a channel is really not performing well, you might have thought Pinterest was perfect to promote your recipe or whatever it might be, but it doesn't, it's reaching an older audience than you thought or whatever it might be, turn that off and go somewhere else, like quickly. Just, it's such a great platform to be able to optimize just every day, really, especially when those pennies count. And then the last one is just, and again, obviously Bridget has really harped on this a lot as well, is just don't join social media unless you plan to listen and engage. You have to make sure someone's dedicated to responding. You have to make sure there's consistency in the voice across the board. But if you are out there and you have reviews unresponded to, you have comments of really like probably close to lead or questions across the board and they're not being answered, you're just missing out on every opportunity within that space of really to engage.
Great, thank you. So now I'm going to ask each of you to provide one example. So we'll start with Bridget. Who, what brands, businesses, or people do you think has done a great job communicating relevant messaging that resonates with consumer sentiment right now? And this is really fitting, I think, for the times, especially for our attendees to kind of go look these up online after the call. But if you could speak to one example.
I'd love to share an Uptown example, and that would be the Cincinnati Zoo. They have done a fantastic job of communicating updates from the beginning across all of their platforms, all of their channels. They've been authentic about what they're up against, communicating budget shortfalls, at the beginning, and that has continued as well. They've tapped into fan favorites to help raise money and honestly lift people's spirits. So we've seen Fiona making guest appearances on Zoom. T-shirts. And now as they shift to reopen, they've communicated with patrons and authentically, like, this is what we're going to try to do once we can turn on to reopen. here's what to expect, but also acknowledging like that they're hoping for the best. But they're letting people know what to expect. So once they do reopen, people know. And they have a great FAQ page that has the latest information, and it's a place that has been updated throughout. I just think they've done an incredible job and continue to do so.
Tory?
So one of the things that I think people are really looking for right now is a lot of people are anxious to get back out and do things, but they're also nervous about what that'll look like and don't really have a good understanding of what things look like moving forward. So one of the examples I've seen recently of a company that I thought did a really great job with that is Green Acres. It's actually like a small canoe rental business over on the west side. And they put together a really comprehensive, really clear page on their website about everything that's going to change, because they're going to have different rules now that they're having to adapt to. And so it's they laid out exactly what people can expect. And they also laid out what they're doing to protect their employees and what they're doing to protect customers. And it was such a comprehensive document that I read it and I was like, I know, I don't have a single question. Like, I know exactly when I want to go canoeing in June, what that's going to look like and what I have to do for this to be like an enjoyable experience for me that's also safe for me and for others. And so that's on their website, and they've also done a really good job of pushing that out on social media and like pushing out reminders, because when rules change, it's pretty easy for that one social media post to get lost, and keeping it top of mind for people and providing updates. And I think as businesses reopen and people start to, resume regular activities, that's what a lot of people are going to need, and that's what they're going to look for. And I think they've done a really good job with that.
Great. Deidre?
Yeah, I think, and they probably go into both of doing a really good job and probably, could improve in certain areas as well as Kroger. They're one that they had to stay open the entire time. They didn't have, any time to really close and then regroup and rethink. They really had to be there for all of our customers across the board, which has been fantastic. And they have done, I think, amazing videos from the CEO. For the R brands, as we work with that team, we've been able to launch a chef series, to make sure that people have a lot of content and variety, and you're, been able to teach, chefs how to, shoot themselves, on an iPhone or different things like that, and just be able to pivot really quickly. Now, obviously, where they could improve is, from those, people have a lot of questions, right? They're worried about the employees, they're worried about the customers and the elders and all these different things. And while they were listening and making good decisions, or the best decision they can make with the data they have, really that response in that moment was lacking, right? Like, people were just left there for a little bit until they could kind of come back out with more of a video or different things like that. And really just where to improve is just a quick note that says you're listening really does go a long way in the moment. But I think, they've been able to react pretty quickly across the board with all the things that they've had to kind of handle and deal with. Now, granted, they're not struggling financially by any means, so they do have the funds and the means to kind of go that route, but I've been really impressed there. One additional one that I just kind of thought of while we're going, SGN, I don't know if you guys have seen any of that great content put out by, I forget his name, comedian that was from The Office, but it has been fantastic to watch, and it stands for some good news, across the board. And I just think the fact that they pivoted that so quickly, and it's just a delight, right, to see all of your favorites across the board. So they're entertainment, they're creative, they're going to come up with great ideas quickly, but I mean, it's been a joy for me to watch as well. And just a way to produce content quickly and scrappy is just fantastic.
I would agree. The creativity level that I've seen from some organizations has definitely made me continue to watch what they're putting out on all of their platforms. Kind of a follow-up question for the three of you, and Deidre, if you want to start, how have brands and businesses missed the mark of it?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is just shutting down, right? Like, if you've just had to let people go, like just reassigning roles, like everybody had to step up and wear multiple hats during this time, right? Everybody's trying to be scrappier across the board, but letting it just fall and going silent and going dark is just unfair, right, to those fans and customers that have supported you before all the crisis, that are going to support you after the crisis, probably some way support you through the crisis, right? Like, people are actually very giving during this time to support small businesses. I was on one Zoom call and we were talking about when we get to go back to the salon, and he said, I've been giving my barber tips, like actual like sending him Venmo money so that he'll get first in line, right? So if, people, if you really have built a good clientele across the board, you have super fans, they want to hear from you, they'll support you in any way possible. So I think people have really missed the mark if they go dark.
How about you, Tory?
I think the biggest miss that I've seen has been a lot of companies really wanted to jump on the bandwagon when things were really going out, like the supporting like the frontline workers as like heroes, which is very true. But I think people have started to wake up a little bit and realize which companies are walking the walk and which ones are just talking the talk. And that hypocrisy has gotten called out on a number of situations. I think it's kind of started to bite some people in the butt when they realize, when those companies are going out and saying things that may not be reflective in the way that they're treating their staff or the way that they're treating their customers and the effort that they're putting into protecting them. And so I think that's one of those situations that people have to be really careful about and just make sure that you're backing up what you're saying.
Great. Bridget?
Kind of building on what Deidre said, it has really bothered me when businesses shut down communications. Like obviously they're still conducting business, or they're trying to figure out what business looks like in the new normal for them, but they completely cut off communications and they don't give you any updated information about anything. I think that's a big miss. Another do not for me has been when brands or businesses have said or seemed like things are normal and everything's fine when it's not. People feel really vulnerable right now, and showing empathy is critical. As is saying, like, we don't know what's coming next and we'll update you when we do, is authentic. And then we talked about this a lot throughout our conversation today, but releasing inconsistent information and not updating websites or social channels in real time, and then going to support that business and seeing a sign that says it's closed is upsetting. So just make sure that all of your channels and where people are getting information about your business are updated.
Absolutely. I think at minimum, if businesses are able to kind of do those, again, hours of operations, like some of those basic essential ways to keep businesses up and running and for consumers to be able to access them either through e-commerce or going in person. But I think some of those simple little ways of just making sure hours are correct, I think will definitely smoothen the reopening process as we go forward and as more businesses reopen.
Right, and as things change, as people are open and then need to scale back, as we've seen, just communicating that throughout.
Absolutely. We have no questions submitted through the Q&A. We had I totally agree from Sean Price with the Salvation Army, so thank you. I know we're at our time here today, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them through the Zoom chat or the Zoom Q&A. I'll give it a few seconds while I'm wrapping it up here, but if we don't have any further questions, we will be sending a wrap-up email to everyone that attended and registered, just providing a little bit more information about some of the items that we talked about today, and access to a few resources, as well as contact information for our panelists. So if there's any other questions that you all have, feel free to put them in the chat box, and if we don't get to them in our last minute or so here, we'll definitely answer those via email. But I can't thank Bridget, Tory, and Deidre enough for joining us today. We had a lot of great questions submitted from our businesses and organizations. We did not have to come up with any of our own questions. All of our businesses and organizations had wonderful questions, and I hope that this information was helpful for all of our attendees. Again, you'll have my contact information, and I'll also send out some of our attendee contact information. And so I just want to thank everyone for jumping on the call, and hopefully we'll have another virtual call in the next month or so through the Uptown Consortium, and we'll be promoting that on our social media platforms as well as our e-newsletter. Just a little plug there. Awesome. Bridget, Tory, Deidre, any last minute thoughts before we wrap up here?
Just good luck to everyone as you continue to navigate, what the new normal looks like. And if you own a business that is starting to reopen, has reopened, best of luck to you.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our attendees.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.